You don't stay the same for long. Not in how you talk, not in how you act, not even in how you think about yourself. It's like every new environment creates a slightly different version of you. And the strange part is, none of them feel fully fake, but none of them feel fully you either. So the question stays in the background. If you keep changing, what is actually real? You notice it in small shifts. You're with one group of people, and your tone becomes lighter, faster, more agreeable. Then you're somewhere else, and suddenly you're quieter, more careful, more reserved. Even alone, your thoughts don't stay consistent. One day you feel clear about who you are. The next day, it feels like that version disappeared. So you start adjusting. You observe what works, what gets accepted, what feels right in that moment. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin rewriting yourself. Not all at once, but piece by piece. You adopt certain ways of speaking. You drop certain opinions. You soften parts of yourself and exaggerate others. And at first, it feels useful. You fit in more easily. Conversations flow better. There's less friction. But over time, something starts to feel off. Because now, when someone asks, "What are you really like?" there isn't a clear answer. And that creates a quiet instability. You start questioning your own reactions. Do I actually like this? Or is this just how I act here? Is this my opinion or something I picked up? The more you adjust, the less solid you feel. Until eventually, you're not just adapting to environments, you're depending on them to define who you are. And that raises something deeper. Why does your identity feel so flexible? This isn't because you're fake. It's not because you lack personality. It's because your brain is doing something it was designed to do: adapt. From a psychological perspective, your mind prioritizes belonging because historically, being accepted by your environment meant safety. So your brain developed a system that scans for social cues and adjusts your behavior accordingly, not to confuse you, but to protect you. The issue is, when that system becomes too dominant, you don't just adapt your behavior, you start adapting your identity. And that's where the instability begins. But to really understand this, you have to look at how identity forms in the first place. Your brain builds identity through something called self-concept. It's essentially a collection of patterns, your preferences, your beliefs, your reactions over time. But here's the important part. This system relies on consistency. When your behavior stays relatively stable, your brain forms a clear internal model of you. But when your behavior changes frequently based on context, that model becomes unstable. Now add another layer. Your brain also uses something called external referencing. This means it looks outward to understand inward. How are people reacting to me? Am I being accepted? Is this version working? When internal clarity is low, external signals become stronger. So instead of acting from a stable identity, you start building identity from feedback loops, like a mirror that doesn't show you directly, only reflects what's around you. Here's a simple mental model. Imagine your identity as a shape made of soft clay. If it has structure, it holds its form, even when pressed. But if it's too soft, every environment leaves an imprint, and over time, you don't know what the original shape was. So the constant rewriting isn't random. It's your brain trying to stabilize itself using whatever information is available. But relying only on the outside creates a loop. The more you adjust, the less stable you feel. And the less stable you feel, the more you adjust. So the real question becomes, how do you build something inside that doesn't shift so easily? Not by forcing a fixed identity, but by creating anchors your brain can return to. 1. Define preferences without context. What to do? Ask yourself simple questions without imagining a social setting. What do I enjoy? What feels natural to me? Why it works: this strengthens internal referencing, reducing dependence on external feedback. Example: instead of deciding what music you like based on what others play, you explore it alone, without influence. This begins separating you from the environment. 2. Notice when you shift. What to do: start observing when your personality changes, not to stop it, just to notice it. Why it works: awareness activates the prefrontal cortex, helping you interrupt automatic adaptation. Example: you're talking differently with someone, and instead of judging it, you think, "This is shift." That small awareness creates distance from the pattern. 3. Keep small consistencies. What to do: choose a few behaviors that stay the same across environments. Why it works: consistency builds stable neural patterns, reinforcing identity over time. Example: maybe you always speak at a certain pace, or keep a specific sense of humor regardless of who you're with. It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be repeated. 4. Reduce real-time adjustment. What to do: pause before changing how you act mid-conversation. Why it works: it limits excessive self-monitoring, allowing your natural responses to surface. Example: you start to change your tone, but instead you continue as you were. That moment of not adjusting builds internal trust. 5. Reflect after, not during. What to do: let interactions happen first, reflect later. Why it works: separating action from evaluation prevents identity fragmentation in real time. Example: instead of analyzing while speaking, you wait until you're alone to think about it. And even then, you focus on understanding, not correcting. These steps don't stop adaptation, they balance it. So you're not shaped entirely from the outside. But that leads to something deeper. You're not constantly changing because you have no identity. You're changing because your identity has no anchor. Like a boat drifting in open water, responding to every wave because it has nothing holding it in place. The goal isn't to stop the waves, it's to create something steady beneath them. And that steadiness doesn't come from forcing yourself to be one way. It comes from returning to small, consistent points of truth, over and over again, until your brain starts recognizing, "This is me," even when nothing else is guiding it. And that recognition doesn't happen instantly. It builds quietly, through repetition, not reinvention. And once it begins, you won't feel the need to rewrite yourself as often, because something inside will finally feel stable enough to keep. So instead of asking, "Which version of me is real?" try asking something quieter. What stays, even when everything around me changes? And stay with that question, not to answer it immediately, but to notice it over time. Because identity isn't something you create in one moment. It's something that reveals itself when you stop constantly rewriting it.